Hello everyone, it's me Clayton. I just finished watching Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, starring McKenna Grace, Carrie Coon, Paul Rudd, Finn Wolfhard, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, William Atherton, Annie Potts, and a bunch of other people in essentially Ghostbusters 4. Now, after Ghostbusters Afterlife reignited interest in the franchise and basically made up for Ghostbusters 2016 for many people, it seemed that this franchise would have a whole new star group of stars to essentially carry the torch of the Ghostbusters franchise. But with this film, essentially it happens to be the next Ghostbusters 2, in the sense that it's clearly inferior to the other Ghostbusters movies, but I still had a lot of fun with it. Let's get to the story, shall we? The story takes place a few years after the events of Ghostbusters Afterlife, where McKenna Grace's character, as well as the other characters from Ghostbusters Afterlife, have all ended up inside the firehouse that the first movie took place in. And they're the ones defending New York from ghosts under the chagrin of Mayor William Atherton, aka Walter Peck. Now that Walter Peck is the mayor of New York, he's making it his mission to try and take down the Ghostbusters once again. This time he has the legal authority to do so. But after the Ghostbusters discover an orb that a bronze orb that basically has the spirit of a frozen god named Baraka, it seems that this entity will be able to essentially take over New York, freeze it solid, and to literally scare his victims to death with his mere presence. So the old Ghostbusters and the new Ghostbusters have to work together to save New York once again. That's all I'll say about the story. Basically, the film happens to feel like it's two separate movies melded into one. On one hand, it's a movie about saving New York from an evil god of ice, who's thankfully a new villain for the Ghostbusters to fight. We don't have to fight Gozer for the umpteenth time, nor any of the villains from the Ghostbusters animated series. But at the same time, we also have to deal with some returning cliches from the previous film. Like, there are so many characters in this film to the point where it feels like some of them are just put in there for the sake of it. Like Finn Wolfhard and and the Kid podcast could have been cut from the entire movie and you'd probably miss nothing. And when you add Camille Nanjiani, Patton Oswalt, and a couple of other characters, it feels like they were only there for exposition and for some plot points that feel like they could have been interesting if they were fleshed out a bit more. Despite the film not even being 2 hours long, it feels like there's a few too many ideas in the film. But some of them can be interesting. I like the new ghost busting equipment, like the RC ghost traps and the drone traps, and even the gunner seat from Ghostbusters Afterlife reappears. In fact, most of the ghost busting scenes are generally pretty good. But it feels like, while some characters have defined story arcs, like McKenna Grace's character has a decent one, I liked most of the stuff with the original Ghostbusters, how they happen to fit into the plot a bit more here than they did in Afterlife. But it really feels like a lot of it just comes across as placeholder ideas that never got to fully flesh out, especially when it comes to the villain Garaka. There's a lot of interesting setup for him, especially with some interesting mythology, but at the same time, it feels like he was a rough sketch of a villain rather than a fleshed out one, since we don't learn too much about him before he's defeated, and while his power set is interesting, the way he's taken out is pretty anticlimactic. On top of that, while there's plenty of Easter eggs and fun fan service mentions in the film, it doesn't do a whole lot new that's creative. So it really feels like, similar to Ghostbusters 2, it has a ton of callbacks to their movies without too much new that's added despite the new technology. So while Ghostbusters Frozen Empire isn't the worst Ghostbusters movie, I will say that it's generally inferior to Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I won't be surprised if the film doesn't sell particularly well. That doesn't make it busting feel bad, but I wouldn't say busting feels good here either. That's why I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. See you next time.